So throughout much of the history that we're going to study, ancient histories, there'll be two types of economies we see very frequently. Now keep in mind they didn't have things like the stock market or the internet or very much education, so they had to keep it simple. Traditional economies are based on customs. For example, children grow up to do what their parents do. It's their custom. The blacksmith has a kid, and that kid grows up to be a blacksmith. If you're born in a tribe and your parents hunt for food, then you will grow up and hunt for food. If you grow up and they are nomadic gatherers, hunter-gatherers, you will grow up to be a nomadic hunter-gatherer. It's almost not much of an economy at all. It's really the simplest form of economy. There's a lot of that in ancient times. Now we get a little more advanced. Now imagine we have a king or a ruler or an emperor or something like that. You have some form of government, and that gives a means for a command economy. A central power, such as a king, controls the whole economy. They collect all the goods and use them as they see fit. For example, in ancient Egypt, they had a command economy, and the pharaoh took all the labor and goods of everyone, and then he pretty much distributed it as he saw fit. At one point, he saw all his land and labor and capital, and he said, we're going to use all of this to create the pyramids. There's a pyramid, sort of. An example of a more modern command economy, where there's generally a government in control of the economy, would be like North Korea. Command economies are closely associated with socialism and communism. Third type of economy exists called the market economy, also known as capitalism or free market economy. This is what we have in the USA. In a market economy, the individual decides what to buy, sell, or produce. Like I can decide one day to glue horns to ponies and sell them as unicorns, something I could do. Just as sure as you can decide as a consumer not to buy my unicorns. No true free market exists, however, as there are still government regulations. In this way, most economies in the world are a mix of free market and command economies. On the topic of measuring economies, they are in constant flux. They get better, they get worse. This is called the business cycle. When an economy is doing well, it is growing. This is called a boom. You might have heard the phrase, the economy is booming. It means it's doing well. It's growing. When the economy is shrinking or growing very little, that is called a recession. People have been talking about recession a lot, really, for almost the last 10 years. Some people say the recession is still going. Some people say it's over. Some people say we got out of the recession, but now we're back in the recession. It's a word you hear a lot in the news. Inflation is another important term. Basically, it means that there's too much money, so it becomes worth less. We talked about scarcity earlier. Well, those same rules basically apply to cash, to money itself. If there's too much cash in the market, it becomes worth less, and that means goods will cost more. The government tries to control inflation by putting more or less money into the economy. So think of it as you used to be able to buy, let's say, a CD. We'll say, who's popular? I don't know, Adele. The Adele CD costs $10. But now there's inflation, so there's too much money out there. It's worth less. So now they sell the Adele CDs for $12 because now $12 is now worth what $10 used to be worth. Inflation. Too much money, it's worth less. Moving this. Alright, there are a few more pages in the book on this chapter, but the concepts are a lot easier to understand. So be sure to read the lesson in the book, because I'm going to be concise. Imports are goods that come into the country from another country. For example, I occasionally buy imported German root beer. It came here from Germany. It is an import. Exports leave the country to be sold in another country. USA's top export is automobiles. So cars that are being built in the United States are sent overseas, let's say back to Germany. That would be an example of an export. Generally speaking, countries like to export something they have a lot of. We have a little graphic here. See, exports go away, imports come in. Trading goods and services is called bartering. This was done before there was money. For example, an accountant doing a hairstylist's taxes in exchange for free haircuts would be bartering. Or let's say I am a painter and my car breaks down, but I don't have any money to get my car fixed, so I might go to the garage and say, I will paint you this nice painting of your shop in exchange for you fixing my car. That's bartering. Alright, globalization is kind of a big deal, so we'll hit it last for today. Globalization is the idea that economies of all the countries in the world that trades with each other are connected. Globalization. All the countries that engage each other in more and more ways are becoming more and more interconnected. If one country has a recession, for example, it might affect every country it trades with. As globalization increases, the economies of all the world become increasingly dependent on one another. So, like now we have the internet, so I can go on Amazon and buy a Steelers jersey knockoff from a Chinese company. That would be an example of increasing globalization, because now I have goods from an entire different part of the country at my fingertips. I could literally do that on my phone. So can you. So that is basically globalization. Is kind of like the world is becoming a smaller place. There's more and more connections, and our economies are more and more intertwined. That leads us to today's quiz. It's worth 12 points, but there's only 3 questions. They're each worth a lot of points because the questions are a little bit harder. It's less identification and more you taking what you learned and applying it to a situation. So it's a better form of assessment, and that's it for today. I believe I left it at 2 attempts, yes, in case you flubbed the first one. And hey, let's say you flubbed the first one, get confused and flub the second one. Let me know. I'll see if I can help you out. Alright, that's it for today. World Studies. Have a glorious day.